the trains were running.
Okay, thank you.
That's
I guess it's a surprise in the right direction, though.
huh?
It's a surprise. It's a surprise in the right.
That's a surprise in the right direction. But I got the distinct impression that many of these announcements were canned, and they weren't really monitoring what was being said. And if they're indeed running trains on Thanksgiving, they should say that that this is an exception, but the trains are running. If they're indeed running trains, just that's the first item. The second item is about, we've all heard about proposed new fare collection system. Now, sounds good. The only thing is, yesterday, early evening, I was taking the bus that goes between Quincy and Ashmont via West Quincy, and more than half the people getting on were putting money on their cards. So I dare say that there are certain routes like the 215, 240, and 238. Those are the ones I know about, where seemingly people put money on in both directions for whatever their reasons are, and that's one thing. Another thing is, one time someone was deposited at my bus stop. He knew nothing about Boston. He was from out of town. So obviously he would have no chance of getting the appropriate card to ride the bus. I don't know how they're planning on doing this, but we're going to have a lot of unhappy people when something like that takes place.
So to briefly answer that question, I believe the plan for the new system is to actually have, where they have vending machines, cards will be dispensed, unlike the current system where you have to guess.
Sure, but I think this is going to be a full conversation.
Yeah, we will have a conversation about this later.
It's beyond vending machines.
Yeah.
I suppose we table this new business and have a full detailed conversation.
Absolutely, that is part of the plan.
I just wanted to raise the subject so when the time comes, these subjects be raised. And today I was talking with my bus driver about another subject, and he was very put out that seemingly the T does not consult with the frontline employees about proposals. You might say, well, they talked with someone from the union, but that's not a substitute for talking with people who are out there every day. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Any other public comments? All right. Looks like the streaming is up.
Yep, for about 5 minutes now.
Okay, and we can begin with our main presentation, or Q&A, I guess. So I don't know if you have anything prepared beyond.
So I was asked here to talk about a recent report I wrote for the Boston MPO. It was about seeing how much wait time savings might exist if scheduled departure times were changed to make headways along trunk sections of bus routes more even than they are. The idea was to kind of create this list that the MBTA could use to prioritize, or if they wanted to investigate smoothing headways, where would the most benefit exist. So we did that. We followed, we kind of used a process that London developed to evaluate this idea of excess wait time, which is actually, it's what they actually apply to schedule, actual arrival times as compared to scheduled arrival times. So if two buses show up at the very same time, we would expect there to be perhaps a long gap following those buses if they're bunched up. So we kind of flipped that to say we're going to treat the scheduled arrival times as actual arrival times, and then we're going to try to find out the most even arrival times are and find out how much extra time a randomly arriving passenger would have to wait. We also added a fun little twist in there where we kind of devalued really small wait time savings. So if you saved 30 seconds, you got essentially no credit for smoothing that headway out, with the idea that there's already so much service there that it's probably not substantial for there's no real tangible benefit to saving 30 seconds in someone's life. Nor is it probably worth service planning doing anything about it, because there's probably already so much service there that there's just no real need to get out of your chair. But if you were to save 10 minutes of wait time savings, you'd get your full 10 minutes per person of wait time savings, which was, I think that was kind of the neatest part of the project as far as doing it.
Yeah.
So you can see how that, I picked an equation to change that, but other equations aren't there, and I think that'd be a fun research project for someone else. So that's, we looked at 50 trunk sections. Does everyone know what a trunk is?
It's worth explaining, I think.
All right. So let's say two bus routes come together, two different places, like branches of a tree. They come together, and people who ride on that segment will just take whatever bus comes next. So there's the 89 and 101 in Somerville, which is my route. There's the 104, 109, they're everywhere, 34, 35, 36. They're pretty much everywhere on the system that someone would benefit from just taking whatever bus comes next. So we identified about 50 of those that we could do something with or look at. And I don't have the exact results of it in my head because there's 50 trunks and 2 directions and 12 time periods each. But so we look at it over a time. Yeah.
Okay.
Questions? Comments?
I have a comment. So the MBTA actually already did this experiment in some sense with the 71 and 73. While the 73 was bustituted while they were working on the street and the trolley wires had to be taken down. In the evening, they ran weird, uneven headways. And then after they put the trolleys back, they went back to a regular 20-minute headway on each route, evenly spaced, 10 minutes apart. Anecdotally, it seems to be working a lot better now than it used to. So I don't know if you were aware of that experiment, but that was a sort of example of that being done kind of unintentionally.
Yeah.
Also on that note, I take those routes a lot, and I notice an interesting thing, which is that there are a lot of people who take, the first bus that comes at Harvard. Very few people getting off on the actually shared section. But there are a few stops past that where, if they live halfway between the two streets, they can take either one, and it's going to be like a 5-minute walk either way for them.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of a potentially larger sphere of people who can benefit.
So I only looked at places where they actually shared stops.
Mhm.
So there were places where maybe, like, I'll just take 89-101 again, because everyone's familiar with East Somerville and Winter Hill, I'm sure.
We'll come visit.
So where Broadway and Main Street separate off,
Hmm.
it's a similar situation where there's a stop on Broadway and stop on Main Street, and yeah, you could probably scamper over in time, but no, I didn't include this.
It's not so much to get off part, on the 71, 73, as much as it is picking up, right? In that trunk area.
Well, the point is that the people who will choose to take either bus, like you can literally see people waiting for the 73, and then, oh, the 71 shows up first, let's all walk over to the 71.
It's just a looser
But-
definition of a trunk.
Yeah, none of them seem to actually get off on the actual, like, shared stops. They'll get off, like, a few stops past that.
Right, and that's my point. It's just that when you're going out on the 71, 73, that trunk is at the beginning of the route. Why would you get off? Because
Right.
you haven't gone far enough at that point. So to me, it'd be a matter of picking up. And once again, I wouldn't expect that you would be picking up that
Yeah.
many people that would take the trunk, because you're usually going to go further out on the branch. So I'm not sure what point you're making.
The point that I'm trying to make is that the trunk section is actually, like, the trunk is longer than what you would think by looking at where the actual shared stops are.
Yep.
Because people will say, I can take either bus for a few stops past the split in this particular case. I suspect it strongly depends on the actual geometry of the routes and, like, what's in between them.
That's why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I would say even with the advent of bus apps now, people can be at a place where two stops, two places, two routes. You can see when one bus is coming versus another. You can walk to the nearest one. They treat that even picking up as the trunk, even though it's not the same shared stop.
I mean,
Technology
like
helps.
if we want to branch out even farther, we could say the people who live between people going down Highland Avenue and people going down Somerville, and they could look that, oh, I could go take this route instead of this route and walk a quarter mile this way instead of that way. Yeah, but now we're kind of stretching what I think anyone should be expected to
I guess
plan for.
Maybe I missed this at the beginning. What are we actually trying to solve for with this?
We're trying to minimize passenger wait time. So if we have buses coming every 10 minutes, the average passenger would wait something like 5 minutes. Whereas if we had a bus come 9 minutes, then 1 minute, then 9 minutes, then 1 minute,
So
they would wait a little bit longer than every 5 minutes.
So it's staggering trunk routes?
It's evening them, it's smoothing them, smoothing the arrivals.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know,
Arrivals or departures?
whatever, sure. Yes,
Yes.
Arrivals at the stop.
it's the same thing. I mean, yeah.
So, again, and I'm only bringing this up because I literally did this, which is odd, because but I getting over, I was in Somerville, which and I got off at Sullivan on the Orange Line, and I was trying to get to the spot on, just on the other side of, what's that Union Square there? It's
Union, Davis.
Union Square. I was trying to get just to the inside of Union Square. So there was multiple. I could have, there's a bus that goes to Union Square and then kind of bangs left, I think, down the highway, and there's another one that cuts across.
Yeah.
And I looked at the app, and even though I had two choices. I can take the one that departed earlier is the one that took the left, didn't take me where I wanted to go, so I could have taken that one and gone along the walk.
Right.
Or I could have waited a second. It turns out the time is the exact same. So I said, all right, I'll just wait. I'll wait for the one the all-in time is what mattered to me when I was making my decision. How was I going to get to my place the fastest? I didn't, and so therefore, because they were going to be at the same time, I said I'll take the one that departs later but drops me off closer, so I therefore have less of a walk, and the all-in time is about the same. I don't know. I'm only explaining it to you just from as you're thinking through your analysis, what a real person did in a I looked at the app, compared it to,
Yep.
looked at the walking distance, looked at the time distance, and all right, they're both.
Yours is a little more complicated, because you
Yeah.
had to go to a arcade trunk.
Yeah.
It was a little bit beyond the,
It wasn't a straight
rigid-
line
my
trunk where I had
rigid-
the same start and end
Yeah.
time. It was
Yep.
yeah, okay. I like that, right? When you're past the trunk, but you're not fully in the branches yet, you're a little bit past the trunk.
we need a,
That's an arcade
we
trunk,
need a
right? That
botanist.
arcade
There's
spot.
gotta be a botanist word for the place where a stem branches off.
Right, you're still on one of the, you're close to the trunk, close enough to the trunk.
One thing I'll say though about the factoring the apps in is just that although it may change the amount of time that you are at the physical stop, it doesn't really change the wait time for you. What's good about the app is that if I miss a bus, I'll know like it's coming in a half hour. So I don't necessarily wait at the stop. Right. I may do some more work, but I'm still waiting. So whether I'm going to take a bus or not, it'll really depend on the headway, regardless of whether I'm outside waiting for it or not.
I would say that for these trunk services, because oftentimes you have 2, 3, 4 bus routes that are serving it, a lot of people don't actually consult apps to look at it because they expect the frequency of service to be relatively common. So
That plays into the argument of doing this analysis and where possible making some adjustments to stagger or smooth the trunks.
I'm happy to give you MBTA service planning's perspective on it as well. We saw this study.
And so I'm gonna also, before I get in, my work was completely uncost constrained, and I only looked at the possible benefit to people. I did not look at the harm that would be caused to people who live on the branches. If they want to get somewhere at 10 o'clock and the current bus gets them to 10 o'clock and I'm saying shift it 30 minutes to 10:30 and they don't want to get there at 10:30, they're at 10. Right. I didn't factor that in at all. I was trunk focused, which was partially a budget constraint, that I had enough budget to do the trunks. So it was find out how much benefit there is, and if there's a lot there, then hopefully the T could go investigate further.
So do you have a comment on his? So we can have a beer off here. You're welcome to too.
So I'll say that.
White men's. Poor white.
And you just lost, didn't you?
So I'll say that having this study and looking at it actually has been useful so far. We are looking at coordination in a way that I wouldn't say that we did not look at it before, but this has perhaps given some new impetus to it, so it's useful in that respect. I will say from a service planning perspective that coordination is oftentimes the lowest of important things that we are looking at. When you're looking at updating the run times, when you're looking at your span of service, when you're looking at frequencies that you need to provide to meet your service delivery policy standards, those are all things that we place a much greater importance on than looking at trunk frequencies. There are also complexities, as Stephen alluded to, in trying to plan for frequencies for a trunk service when you have different routes that are serving that trunk service that have different running times. Because you can't then set up regular frequencies for them there. Because if one route takes 45 minutes to run its entire route, and another route takes 30 minutes, that 30-minute route is just very simply coming once every half an hour, essentially. That other bus route, which you have one route on it, is once every 45 minutes. The frequencies are always going to be changing in that trunk service. They'll never be aligned. So to really make the trunk frequencies be even all the time, you're going to need to have cycle times that are as close as possible. And given that routes go to different locations, that's a very difficult thing to do. That being said, I think it's an important thing to look at when we our building schedules to see if a trip shift here or there is something that is feasible. Oh, and another constraint actually that I should mention is there are instances actually when we, in terms of scheduling, we actually don't want to have even frequencies. A perfect example is where you have the Route 34 and the 34E out of Forest Hills. 34 is on that one of the biggest trunk routes that we have in the MBTA service network is that Forest Hills to Rosendale corridor. That we're putting a bus corridor, dedicated right of way in that corridor.
You could put an orange line extension too. Good work.
Yeah.
Flew into my phone.
But the frequency of buses going along that corridor, they're buses that are coming every minute in the peak, quite honestly. It's very, very frequent service. When you look at the 34 in particular, there are two variants of it, two major variants. One that is a local stop service that goes to Denham Line, and then one that is an express service that goes beyond Denham Line. In terms of the ridership on that, they're both incredibly crowded routes, incredibly popular routes. If we happen to schedule a 34 express before a 34 local, it turns those 34 local people who get on that 34 express, preventing all the people who need that express route from getting on that bus route, so they have to wait until another express route comes along. So instead, what we do is we purposefully put the 34 local 5 minutes or so in front of the 34 express, so that anybody that needs that local 34 service will get onto the 34. By the time the 34E comes in, the express comes in, it has the capacity to handle people that want to go express. So that's an example of where you actually would not want to have this evenly spaced out service because you need to distribute the loads.
And the same thing happens on the 111 and the 111C.
Yeah.
So there's
There's 111C go.
Bellingham Square.
Bellingham Square.
Yeah.
So
So the C
again,
stands
a
for.
lot of people just want to go to Bellingham Square, and you want to go to 111C in front of the 111s that go up to Woodlawn.
It must be missing.
The capacity exists for the people who want to go up to Woodlawn beyond the bus.
And those are the ultimate trunk routes, right? Anything that's gonna, one of them is the 111C and 240 was the 240H. Essentially, you have 95% of the route is a trunk with a little derivation at the end, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, it'd be the same. I mean, you could do the same thing, the CT1 and the 1. Yeah, there's a lot of these kind of silly.
I did like, by the way, in our beard off here that we had, you started with an East Somerville reference. You said, like everybody knows East Somerville, and you said, I see your East Somerville, and I raised you to a Denham line. That's even more obscure. And then you just say, well, yeah, you know what? I see your Denham line. I raised you to a Bellingham Square. So
You're on today, all right?
we're covering the entire. We are covering all of Boston. I just want that to be
I think this is how
we
we got it.
are not focused on one area. We are covering.
I think that's how we got the MPO to fund it, was because it is this regionally important issue. You know, maybe it's not people getting left behind on buses, but it is something that happens everywhere, and it affects an awful lot of people's lives, sometimes trivially and sometimes less trivially.
I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry.
Just one quick one, forgive me for geeking out, but not too much. I tried to understand the formulas. I went to the Transit for London site, and unfortunately, the links that show you how they derive the formulas for the EWT and the SWT weren't working, because I was really curious about why there was a square for some of the values in it.
It's a weighted average of passenger of half the headway. At some point, it's half the headway times the headway again. At some point in the equation.
Okay, all right, that kind of makes sense. I get it.
And you get I've done the proof like twice.
Yeah,
and
well-
I had to convince myself that this is
Okay.
a real equation,
Looks like you
and that it does what it purports to do.
I couldn't get the link, so maybe if you have it, I can get it for you. But what I really didn't understand was IWT, because that to me just looked like it was so different than what I expected. The ideal.
So the ideal, which after I wrote it, it's kind of a loaded word. It's not ideal. It's like ideal from the passenger's perspective. It's like the best case wait time. It's a bit of an unfair.
No, that's okay.
But
It's just that
moving on,
it was
just 'cause
just
I,
so.
you know,
It was.
I wish I chose a different word now.
But that's okay because it's just that the formula itself was so different than what I expected.
So the whole idea is the ideal wait time is the perfectly even schedule. And if a person randomly walks up to a stop, one person, if you have a 10-minute headway, one person is just going to see a bus driving away from them, hearing the whine of a battery. And the next, there's going to be some equal person who just gets the ride as the bus pulls up to the stop and they hop on gleefully. Okay. And this average person you just represented is showing up halfway in between those people.
Well, I'll cut you off because I have something, a question about the analysis itself. So
I have some simpler questions. Is the new fare system going to be tap on, tap off? Are they going to collect origin and destination for everybody? Does anybody
To be
know?
determined, from what I know.
That's not determined yet.
Okay.
I mean,
I believe we'll have the ability to tap off.
I mean,
That might be a pickle on buses.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
so in Sydney, the trains, the ferries, and the buses are all tap on, tap off. So they have every origin and destination.
we can infer.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
don't they have a complicated like zone fare system that's needed for?
I didn't notice that
Okay.
part.
Yeah, or you can charge by
But
the
it was
mile or
pretty,
charge by
it's
the
pretty simple. I
distance.
mean, people don't even think about it.
Hmm.
You know, they just do it in their sleep.
well, I think the assumption is that the technology will allow it. Whether it's going to be implemented
And
in the first
uni-
rollout is up in the air, I think,
The
still.
the uniformity of it is what makes it easy. I mean, people don't even think, no matter what they're getting on. The second thing is, you know, if you had multiples, even multiples, you could have different length routes, right? I mean, if the time multiples were evened out, then you could synchronize them a little bit.
So you could take a route that comes every 30 minutes and a route that comes every 40 minutes, and you could have 10 minutes additional layover time on the 30-minute route, and then you kind of like fake an even cycle time.
Yeah, or you could have
But-
15, 30, 45. I mean,
Yeah, and you'll get every other one.
Right.
But the problem with, if you're adding artificial layover time, you're increasing
Right.
cost.
right.
So
Okay.
it's, and maybe you could do that, maybe it's in the schedule, but maybe it's not. And I don't think you can find out until you try to build the schedule.
So, and then the last thing is everybody laughs about the Swiss because everything is like on 5 minutes or on 10 minutes or on 15 minutes. So it seems to have value to customers because they know the frequencies. But is that necessarily inefficient?
I think that depends on which.
I mean, it's kind of a nationwide policy in Switzerland. Is that?
So you're saying it wouldn't be a 22-minute wait between buses, it would have to be either.
Yeah, and they do it by time of day. So
By-
if you're, you know, if you're in central Basel, which isn't that big, everything's 5 minutes in the core of the day or the rush hours, and then it tails off at the ends, or
Right.
unless.
I think from a service planning perspective, to put a constraint on your headways that you had to be every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes or whatever it needed to be, that's an additional constraint that you can do, but there's a cost to doing that.
Yeah. So well, the other advantage, they have a lot of rail-based trams that we might have buses for, and they have right of way. So
They know what their time
Yeah.
is.
But people talking about the National Swiss Rail System say that was the major change. When they just went to standardized times, that all of a sudden the ridership went up.
And I will say, as part of when we are updating run times, and then we update headways, we call it oftentimes stretching headways, because with no resources, we can increase cycle run times. You have to increase the time between trips to be more reliable, to give more time to each trip. And when we're doing that, we will go from a 15-minute headway to a more uneven headway, because travel times are changing throughout the course of the day. It's so variable. So So sometimes it'll be 15 minutes, sometimes it'll be 17 minutes, sometimes it'll be 19 minutes. And I think our policy choice that we have made in service planning is to provide as frequent service as we can provide instead of trying to get clock face frequencies, which doing clock face frequencies, we wouldn't do an 18-minute headway. We would have to do a 20-minute headway.
Right.
So we'd always have to be increasing the amount of time between every trip. We made the decision that we would rather have as much service as we can possibly provide while still trying to be as reliable as possible.
Yeah, okay, they're pretty high volume. They don't waste a lot of money, but thank you.
These trunk sections, is there a minimum number of stops that routes have to share to be classified as a trunk?
Technically, no, but we did that manually. So we just picked ones that we know people use like that. So there's a chance, there's probably some that have 2 stops like that.
Yeah.
There were some that were down to malls in the south of Boston that I can't remember which ones they are. There's one mall north and one mall south where, in theory, some people who are at that mall don't care which circuitous way they go around. But I took them out because it was so strange. That analysis was just very strange.
So why didn't you include the 350 and 79?
Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, actually, the one of the analysis I actually kind of.
I may have put it in, but I may have thrown it out.
Where's the 350?
It's all that Alewood.
Alewife, it goes from Alewife to,
I have the 77.
77,
So I probably didn't. I have the 350 and the 79. But not all three.
yeah.
I don't remember why they're separate.
Right, just curious. No, I answered my other question. It's very clear that you actually did take the actual passenger pickups when you did your analysis. And
Yeah, there's another, even there, there's some issues. There's some routes that come together, then branch out, and then come together again.
Are there any mid?
Yep, there's
trunks
some
that-
mid-route trunks. I have them. We have the 6276 and the 8788, which are the 8788 is Clarendon Hill down to Davis, and then they split off in Somerville, Cambridge, and then they run to Beechmere together. So those I overstated the benefits there. So I used APC data, automatic passenger counter data, which just tells you ons and offs by stop. There's other data sources that might tell you these people from this section went to this section, and it would be a little more accurate for those kind of strange trunks, version 2, phase 2 of the report. Not funded.
So what happens with phase 1 of the report? So now you have it, you read it, and you choose whether or not to make suggestions to make changes to it based on the report. Is that am I following the ball? He's done money, ball's in your court, you can decide, and I can follow up with you with future subcommittee meetings. Whether there was any exciting outcomes of the changes.
They could even find their own headways if they could make headways more uneven if they
Is there any consideration of how many passengers are affected? In other words, are you putting a lot of energy where it may affect only 3 or 4 people versus a route that's jammed all the time?
I did a passenger weighted metric too that showed you total passenger wait time. So if there was only 3 or 4 people waiting, it would probably show up pretty low on the list. Just because it would be 10 minutes per person times 3 people compared to 10,000 minutes total passenger minutes. I made up numbers, I don't know.
I think transportation was really good. I'm glad you did the transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was there, you know, the first run of this I did it, and there was like I think it was something like the 34E. Some route that just had really high ridership, and the savings from smoothing these things out was so trivial. And it was like the #1 route, and like I'd have to say, like, yeah, you should smooth out 5 minutes, 6 minutes to 5 minutes. It was, so I needed some way to, without me going through every single route and be like, I don't think so, just smoothing it out. I thought it was pretty better.
In my mind, the holy grail of this would be to have it where you could press a button with the appropriate inputs, and it would spit out an analysis like this. How unrealistic with today's, well, with the technology in the agency, NCTPS, or the amount of manpower that took you, is that completely, utterly unrealistic? Is it something that we could do if we did X, Y, and Z infrastructure build out? I mean,
so you could do this. So I manually defined what a trunk was. You could find some way to, I can even think of ways to do it, where you'd say if there's more than one route that shares stops that are next to each other, that's a route, that's a trunk.
Yep.
And then it's finding out what even headways along that trunk is relatively trivial once you've kind of figured out all the steps you need to do it.
Okay.
So finding that first part, just finding out the average wait time savings is not really that tricky once you've done it.
Oh. But it sounds like it's certainly not anywhere near close to being automated, where you could actually like hand an algorithm or a set of procedures to service planning, and they could feed in something, do a variation, feed it in, and go, oh, here's the result. Your wait times change here. And that's. I mean, is that even something that would be helpful, or am I just imagining something that wouldn't really be that useful?
So mine's based on GTFS, General Transit Feed Specification. And by the time they're doing schedule making, they're using HASTIS. So it would be a different, what I'm doing is not applicable to HASTIS, as far as I know. Mine's like after the fact, after you've made a schedule and it's been published to GTFS, with some adjusting some inputs and making sure some stops didn't change and updating ridership data.
Okay, I gotcha.
The process, the algorithm, whatever it is you want to call it, is kind of there.
Okay.
So creating some sort of automated way of taking a headway-based approach and put those into actual trip departure times would be one to do that. In terms of automating that, there's still a lot of manual setup and involved in HASTIS of saying, here are my trip departure times that I want to have. It's also, if you're going to coordinate routes, you want to make sure that the segment travel times for all those routes that are in that trunk section are the same. They should be. They're just traveling the same route at the same time of day. The way that we do route planning right now, where we optimize the segment travel times, our route direction variant, can result in different samples for different variants at the same exact time of day, because it's a different sample of data. It results in different segment run times, which then makes coordination a very difficult thing to do. So to fix that and make the same segment run times, that involves a lot of manual comparison of different variants to one another, choosing what you think is the correct segment travel time.
Of course, it's could also be a feedback loop in that the segment runtime for one route is longer because it's the one that comes first and is always overcrowded and therefore takes forever to get people on and off. And so if you even them out, they would be the same, but if you don't, they're not.
Do you find different kind of behavior amongst the different kinds of trunks, like any kind of pattern, seeing the nature of the?
I don't know, there's an awful lot of trunks there. There's some that have some, there's room to improve on weekends, but there's just so many constraints.
Let me ask you, did you look for that?
I mean, I looked for places that had, like, you could see midday changes from days. So you could see it's scheduled to change middays. But things will become less coordinated during middays. You could save more time in middays. I don't know if I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think that's about right
so let's say you have this kind of like the wide, the double wide trunk mean, and then the single wide trunk mean. Did you notice like a difference in the kinds of not only delays or extended additional waits, but then maybe a difference in the effects of?
I didn't look.
Okay. No, just gonna text.
It certainly would be much easier to coordinate a single wide,
A simple trunk.
a simple trunk, than one that's branching off in two different directions.
Especially because the run times are going to be different if you get one that's continuing through like a 94, 96.
I would say that the single wide, the single trunk, it's easier because you have a single point departure for both of them. At least you can coordinate those departure times.
Right. I was just wondering if the data bore that out, that that there's a difference in the average wait time, maybe, or that you could correlate with the different kind of trunks. And so, if there were a difference, then were they affected differently by even just
If I had to guess, I bet the simple trunks, the Ys, are probably more likely to be coordinated already because they look like trunks. Just like they feel like trunks, they look like trunks. Like, people who are on there have no choice but to use them as trunks. But I don't know.
We should get this guy. Yeah, it's okay. So.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You too.
All right. Next on the agenda is subcommittee reports.
Operations.
Whoever gets to it first.
Sure. I'm going to need some help here from I forgot that I did my partner in crime to usually take the detailed notes, so I didn't take any, so I'm going partially off. A lot off the memory here. It is a little easy. So we did talk a little bit about we did have a bus conversation. We did talk a little bit about the drop trips aspect. I think anybody can feel free to jump in here. We talked about one of the issues, especially on some routes, is the drop trips are caused by not having a driver, and that there's something we don't talk about much of the system, but there is, especially in outlying areas, there is or non-desirable routes, there is a driver shortage. I think we talked about that. Does that sound right? Am I sounding right here, Seth?
Sounds right.
Okay. We also talked about buses, where we could add,
That could come up, I disagree with that.
You would disagree with that thing? Okay, then maybe we can talk. Maybe that's the previous one.
Yeah, I think Jonathan was there, and I was on the phone. I remember that.
Were you in that? Were you in the last one? Yeah, you were there. You were there. So then we did transportation. So that's fine. What else did we talk about related to buses? We did talk about adding buses to routes. No? This is the worst subcommittee report. Which is why I don't want to. All right, we'll skip the bus one. We did talk about red light busing. to your point, we had an in-depth conversation about how there are multiple activities going on on the weekends. So because they're doing busing on multiple lines, the MBTA actually does not have enough buses available to do the busing. So for the red line busing between Park Street and Kendall, because of the bridge work, they actually hired tour buses.
And they were, I took one and it was fabulous.
I took one as well. It is a fascinating. We talked about it. We talked to Craig. We should go do it. And I did do it. It is actually fabulous. I think a little stronger than I would choose, but I would say it is fascinating, and it is given the circumstances, is interesting. I think it's above and beyond what you could have done in this situation. So essentially, when you get off, if you're trying to get into the city on the weekends, you get out at Kendall, and they usher you over to the tour buses, who are right there, or right when you get out, right on the street there. And then they have to do a loop around the Marriott, and they all leave a platoon, if you will. So what they have to do is they have to get all the buses across. They have to get the buses across the bridge in this kind of platoon formation. So they wait for all the buses they wait for the red line to be fully empty. Everybody comes aboard. They wait for the buses to be fully loaded. They then release the platoon. The platoon drives around the Marriott, goes over the bridge in a platoon, and then drives straight to Park Street. I understand on the way back, I didn't do it the way back. The way back's a little trickier because you can't do we talked about this in our subcommittee. There's no easy spot to do a flip around at Park Street. They can't make the turn up towards Beacon Hill. They have to go all the way around the Common to make that U-turn. So it works. It is very interesting to the middle of your trip. Because what I did was I was trying to take Harbor. I was trying to get from Harbor to Ashmont. So I was red line to tour bus to red line, which is a fascinating kind of trip as well. So it is funny to be on a tour bus with a whole bunch of other MBTA riders and then be off and be back in your subway again. But it does, I think the one negative other than being fabulous would be that it does add time. It is a significant, by the time you wait for everybody to load and leave the platoon, and then reload and get off and get back down the station, it does add time.
The other thing I think we brought up, and I personally, it happened to me, is that the T was suggesting people take the number 1 bus. And that should never have said that, because one Sunday I was going from Cambridge to Boston on the number 1, and I had to wait for 4 buses. I could have taken the red line. I just thought the 4 buses did not come 1, 2, 3, 4. They came 15 minutes, another one. Couldn't get on it. It was crowded. The T should have kept their mouth shut about the Route 1.
Were they evenly spaced?
Or added service, maybe?
I don't think they could have. They were already paying for. There's plenty of room on the tour buses, and when they did run the MBTA buses, there was plenty of room on it. So just keep your mouth shut.
Right, so that was the red line busing, striking that bus down. So we do owe you a follow-up still on the drop trips and the other things you mentioned in public comment. So let's make sure we cover that in the next subcommittee.
Actually, I got another question about the replacement busing.
Yeah.
Why were they waiting to dispatch everything at once? Did you get a sense that there was an efficiency aspect there? Or, I mean, in other words, were they filling up were they filling up the number of buses with the people who were on a particular train and then sending those buses, or were they sending like 10 buses regardless of whether all 10 were filled or not?
I think they were single tracking over the bridge on top of
Yeah,
everything
I
else.
think they're trying to mimic
They're,
the red line car.
they don't want buses passing each other on the bridge, I think may have been part of it.
Okay.
Because if it's only like one lane open on the bridge.
But the buses are going over the bridge in both directions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, then that makes sense, sorry. I thought they were using okay.
On the drop trips, we've been through this a few times. It comes down to you just don't have the drivers, and they generally know when it's going to happen. And so they do what they can with the drivers that they have. And so distributed, versus the route demand and where the drivers, what garages there at, and I mean, that's part of the reason for, trying to cut down on absenteeism, using that word loosely, because that is the main factor, in the shortage of drivers in the city in general. It's going to happen, so they do the time. Am I essentially correct?
Well, absenteeism is certainly one of the factors, but right now, we just don't, we haven't hired as many people, many people are retiring than they are being hired. So we're just losing more guards than we need on a regular basis. Not to get into it too much, but we have less than 2% overall trips are dropped system-wide, which doesn't sound that horrible, except there are certain routes that have much higher percentages of drop trips. Those routes tend to be the most frequent bus routes that are out there, and the most frequent bus routes that are in certain garages. So the 77 out of the Bennett garage, the 111 out of the Charlestown garage, those are the only key bus routes in those garages. And because they are coming every 5 minutes, every 7 minutes, the thinking, definitely have a problem with this, is that it is better when choosing whether to drop a trip that runs every 60 minutes or dropping a trip that runs every 7 minutes, that you would drop a trip that runs every 7 minutes. Problem being that the loads on those 111s and the 77s are so great that they then cause crush capacity problems in subsequent trips. And we are, right now, the level of drop trips is quite substantial. It's something that the highest levels we're working on.
Has this been discussed at the FMZ meetings at all in the last 6 months?
I'm not sure.
You have gone through all of those MCs per se. But look, you can make the example even less extreme. If someone takes a 77, you can say, make it every 7 minutes versus every, 30 minutes. And I would still say, take from 77, instead of taking from the one with the heavy of 30 minutes. But what I would say is given that you can then predict that you are going to end up in crush, which then leads to bus bunching. That's the real issue, is bus bunching. That there be some active management of unbunchment. Because it's going to happen. What happened for that as easily as it will happen because you have a person in a wheelchair getting off and on within the group. And given these things happen, with the case of the wheelchairs, that's not terribly predictable. But given that you know that much is going to happen, you just need to figure out some ways to actively manage that. And I know that there are constraints with the bus operator schedule, but to the extent we can mitigate it all.
It's a topic we have not ever covered before. We frequently mention the issue of bunching, but we haven't talked about the active management of it. Is there any transit system out there that does a good job of it? That we're not the only transit system in the world that there's a hiccup along the way from one route and all of a sudden everything's slammed behind it. What are best practices in the industry to handle bunching?
I think we should actually, if we're really serious about it, get Dave Carney. I mean, he's been doing this for years.
Yeah, no, it'd be a great day of conversation.
Yeah, I don't
start with
think we
that.
have to independent of him. I know he must have been carrying research project must have been.
Yeah, I know we've talked in the past about skip stops or run express, and I think it always comes back to being a poor customer service experience. To be on a bus and then told, oh, if you want to go to any of these intermediate stops, you've got to get off and wait for the next one because this bus is being sent to 20 stops ahead, and you want to stop that's 7 ahead. I mean, I think that's a bad policy.
You just knock the lights off, say out of service.
Well,
and then it just it goes. You let one bus load up, or it comes into the garage. or he comes into the bus station with our service on it, 77, for example, zips out, to maybe Porter Square. He starts picking up people there. That's what comes in, it's like in service and picks
Yeah.
all the people at Porter Square. So,
At the beginning of the route,
yeah.
absolutely, it's possible. Yeah, I think most of the bunching shows up though, middle route, right?
I mean,
Well,
if the other thing is that if they're pre-bunched, my understanding is that, or if you have this gap, having the drivers on either end of it try to be on time with this ghost bus in the middle that isn't there actually leads to a worse experience. If the one ahead of it slows down a bit, you can fill that gap partially. If the one behind can leave a little bit early, that fills the gap partially, but that requires active management. And that seems to not really be the default.
I mean, there are active management tools. There's a bus operations control center that's out there that they try, but there are limitations that exist. When on the 111, certain peak periods, you're dropping upwards of a third of trips.
Ooh.
It is really hard to coordinate that.
That would be impossible.
A
Third, wow. Ooh.
Absolutely. We don't know that, but a lot of those are intentional, you're saying, because they're other, it's not necessarily that it's always the 111 drivers who are dropping the traffic, it's another route, and they're choosing to take from the 111. Both intentional. It's a combination of both.
The other constraint is interlining. That if a bus route needs to get to its next place so that it can turn into another bus route so that it doesn't lead to bunching on that bus route, even if it's right behind another bus, it's got to keep going or else the next trip is going to lead to bus bunching and way problems. So interlining is another constraint that we put on because we get better efficiencies out of it when everything is running correctly, but does it run correctly, interlining can create problems in terms of bus bunching.
Just going back to operations report, one other thing I want to touch on is we briefly talked about the T ambassadors. I related some personal stories about I see them every day in South Station. Although their initial rollout, I think there was some concerns where there was an incident. From what I've seen, they've been very helpful, and I had a couple personal experiences where I thought they did a good job. So I just wanted to reported back to the group my findings on that. Is there anything? Stephanie, you were on the phone, I think.
Yeah, I think I related how my experiences with the keyless ticket checkers at North Station has been very good, and I haven't observed more than maybe a 30 to 60 second slowdown in getting through that extra layer of ticket checking compared to usual. It seems like even the time that I was right in the middle of peak at about 4:45 or 5 o'clock, it was still a pretty smooth operation. So concerns about ticket checkers or upcoming turnstiles at North Station, South Station, and Back Bay, which apparently is still planned even before AFC 2.0, I don't think they're going to bear out. I think that the operation is smooth enough that I've talked to some of the ticket checkers. I haven't heard of a single person missing their train. I think I told you about over the phone in the subcommittee meeting about one time that, well, there may have been more, but at least on one particular occasion, a passenger claimed that they had missed their train because they were stopped at the gate of North Station to have their ticket checked. And they actually went back to the security footage and found, no, that person didn't miss their train because they were having their ticket checked. They missed the train because they were late to get there. It wasn't because of the ticket checkers. So I am very encouraged by that, and I feel a lot better about the idea of turnstiles.
That's all I have for.
We also came up with questions for Rose Yates, who's going to be at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of in the same boat that Craig is in. Brian, who took notes, isn't here, but I talked with him and got some of his notes. So we had John Adamucci. He is a guy from the Transit Lab at MIT, director of the Transit Lab, and we talked to him about his ideas for funding. He's the whole funding situation for transit in general, MBTA in particular, and I've been trying to get him since the Focus 40 meeting at MIT back in March or something, and ran into him, and he was just like, just so frustrated about the funding, and so well, first off, before we got into that, he expressed, I would say, rather serious skepticism about the advent of the autonomous vehicles. He just sees lots of technical problems with their rollout. So I feel that I have to say that I didn't argue with him because that wasn't the point of having him to the meeting. In fact, I'm always interested in opposing points of view. And so he said essentially, he was talking about a lot of infrastructure issues that are associated with the autonomous vehicles being hard to implement, like what you need in the roads and what you need more. So he spent a little time dealing with that. And essentially, in the end, we agreed that we would try to contact people from the business world, in particular, Jim Rooney, who was a GM, who's now the CEO, I forget what the position is for the Boston Chamber of Commerce, because he's having been a GM, and I see him on the NECN business show a lot. He's very pro-transit, and so we're going to try to meet with him maybe early next year, sometime next year, and try to get his insights as to what maybe the business community can do in terms of transit. I kind of feel this is going a little far afield of the role of rock. I can rationalize it by saying that we are exploring stuff. We're not going to really advocate to these business people what they should do, but find out what they see as potential, and then what we learn from that, we can then bring back, to the team. But hopefully, just in the process of getting this, having this dialogue, a lot of times you're just trying to spur someone else's action. So you have a conversation with them, and somebody gets going, and then they pick up the ball and go with it. So who knows? Maybe it'll result in Jim Reed coming and talking to us something. So that was that, and we talked a bit about our plans for next year. One of the couple issues we want to really delve into is understanding, getting more insights into how projects are selected, and then getting some insights as to how the teams determine whether those projects are effective. And I've had a conversation with Jim since then, and gotten some insights from her about how there is a dashboard on the NPO's website that kind of shows the effectiveness of the projects that they have done. And I talked with Benjamin, his last name, and he gave me a real detailed layout of what's required to create that. And so we have a sense of what might be needed for the MBTA to do similar things. And so we're going to pursue that some more. That's it. Leave some time for our new business external meetings.
Yeah. You said Jim Rooney was at the MBTA?
He was a general manager, maybe an interim general manager. I don't know how long he was here, but Jim Rooney, he's now like the head of the.
Can't find that anywhere.
Every time I introduce him, they say that, and it's not like he denies it. So
Interesting.
I'm not sure. Certainly it was before the Rock started.
Yeah, he doesn't have that on LinkedIn, just the Convention Center Authority. Interesting.
All right.
Not important.
Reports on external meetings. Have any of those?
So I'll do it quick. RTAC was interesting. They talked about transit infrastructure mitigation and it's like how to assess transit projects. And I'm sorry, students were not as good notes on it. But they also talked about how the transit model feeds into MEPA assessments, and so that was interesting, and so we became official members of the RTAC, and so now we're part of it, and attendance is, we expect to be half the meetings. So overall, I'm very good. It's interesting dynamic, and I'll circle back to the one on the TIA. Another meeting I went to was on the autonomous vehicles working group, and it was all about insurance. And the take home for me on that is that the insurance industry is taking this seriously. This is going to happen. The problem for me is that the model they're using is the non-shared model, and so as I see the insurance industry, if it's going to happen, you'll have the four-person sedans, that are essentially occupied by one person that's autonomous. They're not really thinking that you're going to have zombie vehicles, but they're not discarding that either. And so essentially, they see themselves more as a rapid response entity, meaning that they'll see how it develops, and they'll write the policies based on what they see happening. They'll try to do some predictions, but they just feel they are robust enough to handle whatever comes along. It's going to be something just as focused times. The Arlington Autonomous Vehicle Education Forum went very well, extremely well. And I know that MEPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, is thinking about using this model for talking with other municipalities. And I have since learned from Scott Peterson that the feds have requested, or not requested, they are dictating that the NPO start their recertification process a bit earlier, because it's going to impact the budget for studies and planning for the cycle, meaning the fiscal year 18 cycle, or fiscal year 18 cycle. And so there may be some curtailment in studies or studies for funding to SSM, so we need the core funds that we're going to go vehicle, on time. That's it. So while we do this new business, we've got handouts.
Just a letter for approval.
New time or old time?
Old time.
Okay.
Oh. Read it.
Old business, I guess we have this letter for approval. So, as you probably know, the MBTA has a new general manager, and
Because it's a formal letter making the invite, our first contact with him, I wanted to make sure that we all agree on the spirit and specifically the language. There's not much to it there, but does anyone have any concerns about the time frame? I'm proposing January as ideal, simply because the sooner the better. He's been on the job since August. Should be time to settle in, but I'm leaving the option of February or March.
He probably will present his things, but I think we should have, not that we should attack him with why aren't the buses running on time, but we should have some general good questions to ask him, like where do you see, I don't know, I'm making it up now, where do you see the T in
Well,
5 years?
on the related topic, we were talking online about having the December meeting here, say this, perhaps the second half of the meeting a month from now here, be more of a get to know you for the new members who will be starting in January.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they're welcome to attend in December, but not,
Right.
they don't have to. But if we did do that for the December meeting, that will give us a chance to bring up as the new bigger group what are some of the issues that we want to bring to the table for Mr. Ramirez coming in on, say, January.
We don't want to overwhelm.
No, no, of course not. And we also wouldn't want to overwhelm the new members if they can join us in December with the pressure of having to come up with stuff to go before the general manager. You know, but
They may have a million questions already.
sure, yeah, and that's partly why I thought it would be a nice tie-in to have, if Mr. Ramirez can attend in January, and then we have this
Right.
sort of intro and sort of get yourself ramped up for the new members in December. It seemed like a good synergy.
So that's the one piece of the letter I think is missing here.
What's
If I'm pretending to be him and reading this letter, I don't understand why I'm being invited. Am I sitting there observing? Am I expected to make a presentation? Am I going to be coming with questions? I think there's going to be some kind of expectations here in terms of, you know, like what we want, what would he be expected of him?
That's a good point.
I'm not going to sign up to go to a meeting. I have no idea what I'm going into.
Yeah, I know we typically do solicit comments for some guests beforehand. It's kind of a way to show that we're not going to attack them with the bar with questions. So that's something we could do after the brainstorm, say it's December. If we did agree to January, then we could provide them with a list of questions, say, 2 weeks out from the meeting, just so we have it.
We also should put Trish's name on here somewhere so that he knows.
Yep, very bottom. In the footer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like that idea. Yeah, I can add that text about
Yeah, I would do something along the lines of,
setting expectations for what we might cover, but we won't. But we won't know exactly, but-
give you an opportunity to address the group. Give us your preliminary. Having done the job a little while, give me some preliminary thoughts, or thoughts about the system, and any updates on exciting work. The new directions you take with these, so we're aware of them. And then if Darlene would you like an opportunity to open have a brief question and answer session after you're open, after any statements you like to make.
Thank you very much. That's great.
You might want to invite Trish too before, I don't know. She's a political person. She may say, yeah, it's great. I don't know.
Great idea.
I think we get off on a good footing.
Okay.
Excellent.
So I think the consensus is,
I'll do a second draft.
yeah, Stefan will do a second draft. I think we
Great.
What you have here is great. I think you just add that snippet in there.
Okay. Well, then you want to, we'll take it up by email for approving a second version?
That's fine.
Okay, so we won't vote on this one. We'll just say well, we could say if nobody has any concerns about the format, the letterhead, the typeface, the font size.
Motion to approve pending a new paragraph being added.
All right. Second. Great. Thank you very much.
And I'll be happy to, I'll be happy to walk it over. You can email it, but also we would like to walk it over again.
I wouldn't know where to, so please, yeah, that'd be great if you don't mind.
Yeah, we have it by next Thursday. I'll
Sure.
be building them before the Seattle meeting.
Good point.
So, another thing we had RTAC was the transit litigation, and it was MassDOT and transit impact, transportation impact guidelines, and how they are also working with MBTA to determine how to mitigate the impacts of various transit projects. So what I'll do, I know there's hardly any information in that, but what I will do is send you all the slide deck from this presentation, because they are pretty dense. They're very dense, and there's a lot of information in there. But I was happy to see the coordination between the MBTA, the developers, MassDOT, and RTAs for them to develop a considered transit approach to transit projects.
All right. Any other old business? I think for new business, we wanted to discuss the AFC2 system somewhat. So, anyone have anything that they really want to say about it?
Permission to get on my soapbox.
Granted,
Yeah.
Soapbox is on the table, so you stop standing on the table.
I've been doing a lot of reading on this, so hopefully I can bring some light things to the table that will help kind of start a conversation here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with kind of, before I get into kind of, before I get into benefits and a few other things, I did want to start with kind of two disclaimers, if you will. One is it is our job as a committee to look after all riders and consider all riders and the pros and cons to any change in the system that, of this magnitude impacts all riders. It may be advantageous for some, it may be disadvantageous for others, and we need to think about the, weigh those benefits and costs. My point of view is kind of looking at all people, how the benefit and not, or and those who are being disadvantaged, how we can mitigate that, can we come to something that's overall better for the system. In doing the research and looking at it, it's my overwhelming perspective that this is absolutely the right way to go. This is the right thing that the T is doing. I think to a certain degree, the media reports, Boston had one today, others have chimed in, have been overwhelmingly negative. I think they've been trying to find that story of finding the person who has the grandmother in the North End who's rides the kind of extreme example, if you will. And I don't need to say that these extreme examples don't exist, and that we have to make sure that we're looking after those extreme examples. But I think overall, for the vast majority of riders, this is has really strong benefits. Benefits, at least as I understand them, and we can get into a discussion about whether you agree or disagree with them. One is the cost savings. Projecting a cost savings just based on the maintenance of machines to take in the cash on all the buses and just costs of collecting the cash on all these buses. There's a cost to that. And so there's actually a cost savings, not obviously a cost way to implement the system, but overall the maintenance costs will be lower on the new system. Yep. Two is, and their projection is $65 million. You take it for what it's worth, whether it's the right number or wrong number, but they have done the math, their projection is $65 million savings. Two, the second benefit is it opens the opportunity for all-door boarding. And for the average rider, we're not outside of the Green Line extension, knock on wood, it's going to go through, knock on wood. We're not adding a lot of new traffic. We have the system we have. And the way to increase throughput is to get things through the system faster. Yep.
Is that $65 million for you, right?
It's for the life of the contract, so it's not for a year.
10-year contract?
13-year contract.
Thank you.
So I think everybody in this community is well aware of the benefits of all-door boarding. And obviously we're talking about mainly about buses and trolleys and green lines. So you can't get there without the not taking cash on buses. And that's part of I think the misnomer is calling it a cashless system. It's a no cash on board system. Yep. You can still pay with cash. You just have to pay with cash at a physical location. Yes.
There is some potential for all-door boarding to apply to commuter rail as well.
Yes.
I'll throw that in there.
Yep.
Not at all stations, but at some stations.
I forget about commuter routes. That's an important point. There are many commuter rail stations. That's a great point.
Yep.
So one is the savings. It's a system that's costs us to run. Two is it opens us up to all-door boarding, which is a huge benefit. And then three, this is just for you. This is the precursor to doing any driverless. If we're ultimately going to get to a driverless system, I think having a cashless system on board is a key component of that.
I appreciate the eyes. I think this is kind of independent of whether or not LT goes to the ASC 2.0. I just don't think it's going to make a difference, but it's great. I'll take mine. I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to get into kind of what I thought were some of the mitigations of the issues that have been raised. But if you want to, I think that's where you're going. So if you want to throw it out there, I can
I support it. I was just surprised by the $700 million price tag. I was like, so how much did AFC 1.0 cost? And I was thinking, I don't remember what it cost, and I would like to double that cost for rate of inflation. I was like, $3.25 billion.
Yeah,
It's like, wow, that's a lot.
That's one thing I did not do research in, so I don't know whether that's the right cost or not.
Well, this number they put it out there, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. You know?
That's true, we haven't really discussed that today.
So is that from the life of the contract, I guess? I haven't done the research myself, and I'm not in the CIF committee, so I mean, I need to do some work for the next meeting, but I was just like.
I have heard that there are alternative ways to pay for that, so the company's gonna get their money, but it's not like you're necessarily writing $705 billion. You're not getting the big giant lottery-sized check that you're handing over to them. There are ways that they can take payment out. Like there can be, you can apply like a per transaction thing in there. There's different ways different systems have done it.
So that's all I had to say. Before, I was just surprised.
So I guess just going into a couple other to that point, I would say we're probably going to replace the system anyways. So I would imagine, in my mind, cash is dying. The way I would think about it is to make cash work on trains is you're essentially being backwards compatible, and there's always a cost of being backwards compatible. Is it a risk to jump to the next technology and make things about the future? Yes, but I mean, how many different projects do we wish the T had kind of just started from scratch rather than trying to make something completely replaced as opposed to trying to integrate backwards compatible and the downsides of being backwards compatible. Remind everybody that this has worked in London for a long time. This is they first started in 2012 and went fully cashless on vehicles in 2014. So they've been doing it for 3 years. We're not going to go online for another 3 years. It'll be 6 years after London. So we're not necessarily we're on the newer side of things. We're not. This isn't like everybody's doing it, but we're definitely not breaking new ground here either. Somebody's done that for us ahead of time. And then I'll get to the big point. I think this is where we'll have the biggest conversation is. The focus is the concern that people won't be able to ride, get access to it. And I think one of the things that's lost in it, that everybody's missing of, is it's not just the Charlie card. Charlie card is only Charlie card is only one way of paying on the vehicle. The other two ways to pay on the vehicle are via a credit card or bank card with a chip. The tap chips. Not to say that every credit card would work, but I think the goal is to make as many as possible work. So anybody who has a credit card should be able to just tap that rather than having a specific Charlie card in their wallet and choose phones. If you have a Mac, either with an app or in some, I think really the direction they're trying to go, what they did in London, is you're using you don't have to have the app per se. You have MasterPass or whatever or Apple Pay, or you make it compatible with all the other ones. So if you had, so Barry's example, they brought up somebody off who just dropped into Boston from the middle of nowhere, assuming that their credit card would work in a coffee station to get a cup of coffee, or they use the phone to get a cup of coffee. If they can pay to get food somewhere or pay for a hotel room in this new city that they're in, they should be able to pay to ride the T. So that kind of risk is mitigated. The one true risk that you have, and the one group is so what we're talking about is riders who do not have a credit card, do not have a smartphone, and don't have the ability to store a lot of money on a Charlie card. So what we're talking about here is today, just the concept that 7% of trips are cashed today. On certain key bus routes, that is higher. It is closer to 20%. I think the example Barry gave is the Quincy route there. It is closer to 20%. Is what the numbers bear out. So these scenarios do exist. This is where you mitigate it. If you know which routes are causing it, these are the routes that you invest in putting the Charlie card dispensers. You don't have to put them on all routes. You put them on the routes where you know you have this. You know you have this issue. So long story short, I'll get off my soapbox. I paid with a credit. I use a credit card today to buy a muffin for $1.73. It took 10 seconds because swiped it and I walked away. I see, if we can get there with muffins, I feel like the cups of coffee, I think we can get there with tea, and I think the advantages outweigh the negatives, and I think there are additional ways that we can mitigate the concerns for the 7% of the population that is using cash. Sure.
Just piece of info.
I'll ask the chairs if it's okay if Mary asks a question.
It's not a question, just a point. It was asked, what did it cost? And I found an APTA report from 2004 that estimated the rollout of Charlie Card, the current fare system, as $160 million under Michael Mulhern, general manager.
So the PGF cut out there is the rollout versus the lifetime of the contract.
It would just be the maintenance cost of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the current AFC2 contract includes a lot more things. I saw some comparison to other contracts from other cities, and it is a higher cost, but it also includes more things, so it's hard to really compare it directly. And I think it requires more research, is what I'm saying.
Can we have somebody come and give us the real deal?
I was hoping that we would. David Block-Schechter is on the short list for that. I mean, he was, well, not hesitant. He was unwilling, which is completely fine. He was unwilling to talk about that last time he was here because the focus at that time was on the new website, and it was still out to bid at that time. Right, exactly. So I think we are.
At some point I want to talk about the website. I can't find anything.
But I think we are up for another visit from David Block-Schechter, probably February or March, depending on how things work out with the new GM and other people.
You go to find, I don't want to take time, but go to find how to get somewhere, take this bus, this bus, this bus. Doesn't tell you what bus, just says bus, bus, bus. What bus number? I don't know who they had edit or try it out, but obviously not a T-rider.
I'm not laughing at it, it's just the way you say it. That's all. It's like, it's a serious issue, man. I'm not laughing at the issue, it's just the way you express it.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind, Barry seems to have a...
Yeah,
A comment about the paying on the bus. I just would suggest that the T has the capability of generating a map of the bus routes that have the largest percentage of people adding money to their machines. Also, the bus routes that have the largest percentage of short fares. This might be instructive as to where the T should concentrate their efforts.
thank you. That is a good comment.
very good comment.
I wanted to make a point that in London, in particular, they went to cashless buses, but this relies on having a very, very extensive network of vendors selling Oyster cards and letting you add money to your Oyster card.
I think either was a non-Oyster card component. Then you can use a bank card and eventually use a smartphone. I don't think money's on the smartphone piece yet, but the vast majority of the trips are still on Oyster cards.
Yeah, but they also have a very extensive network of Oyster card vendors for those vast majority of trips, because I don't have any of those contactless credit cards.
You don't have any contactless credit card, right?
No.
You have a smartphone?
Yeah.
Would you then have any smartphone?
Is my smartphone new enough? Maybe. I don't know. But
So you're talking about, you have 7% that are done on cash, and then you were saying 70% of people have a credit card, 65% have a smartphone. We're talking about that nexus of people who don't have a credit card or a smartphone.
Yeah, that's the environment because the bus riders, a lot of them are
No, absolutely.
Oh,
Essentially, the mitigation for that is the Charlie card. You wouldn't, in a perfect system, you wouldn't, if you didn't have an environmental justice concern, you wouldn't need a Charlie card.
Right.
You would say anybody who has a smart card or a credit card, you should go on using that. the trolley car in many ways is the mitigation for that problem.
Well, but you also have, students have to have special passes, and us old folks, we get a special pass.
Right, so your students will have that built into their app.
So to that point, though, I think the vendor network is important, and I think we have a role to play in making sure ours looks more like London and less like the current Charlie Card vendor network.
I'll have to tell you, we had a conversation 2 years ago multiple times about that you should be able to get a Charlie Card every time you go into the city.
But you know what, they failed when they promised, the team promised when the Charlie card was that you could put money on it anywhere. Well, there are very, very few places that you can put money on it. In places that don't have subway stations.
That's the other component, is that AFC1 also had many grand promises, only about half of which were ever actually fulfilled. I'm a little bit more optimistic about this one because it's sort of the contract for everything up front. But that's another thing to watch out for. I also want to make a point about people are very concerned about that one person adding cash in the fare box on the bus. What about the other 39 people on the bus patiently waiting for an extra 60 seconds while that one person adds their bills one by one?
Yeah. I need to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but time check, it's 6:40. We have to do an executive session, which means, unfortunately, the public will ask me to leave. But we're going to do it at the very end of the meeting. How many people want to speak at the public comment period at the end? Just Barry? And, I'm sorry, Carl, sorry. Couple minutes, 1 minute each, do you think you can do? 30 seconds?
Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Let him talk.
Yeah, why don't we do that right now and then do executive session and kick them out?
Well, I also wanted to get a feeling for
Okay.
whether there's any more conversation about the AFC.
We can continue this, this is not gonna go away, it's gonna be every
Yeah.
day.
Okay. Well, our executive session might only need 5 minutes, but we wanted to allow 15 to 20 just in case any. Well, I guess, are there any objections to moving on to public comment, and then we'll go from there?
I think we probably could table the AFC 2.0 talk to maybe the next subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
I think we also wanted to have this to see if there's any kind of general consensus for that.
Yeah, that
that
looks like it's
interview.
gonna happen on Thursday after 5 o'clock. As I said, I will just talk to them and not talk to them on behalf of Rock. That's how I do a lot of
Yeah,
things.
that's fine.
I'm a Rock member, just make it clear that I'm not speaking for the Rock community. Yes, having taken the position, I'll say we are in discussions or something. About that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
All right.
And it, just a shout out. I just found, and I put link in the email to the list. There is Suzanne Bump, Office of the State Auditor, an official Massachusetts state audit of the MBTA's automatic fare collection system covering 2006 to 2011. The report came out in 2012. I didn't know about it. I just put the link out to the list.
I forget what the upshot was.
Yeah,
it
that-
was good.
Yeah, there may be a lot of relevant points in here to apply to the future discussion of AFC 2.0.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that's not the case, but we have
Yep,
it.
I hear you.
The report's really very good. Very good. It's nice to do the report, and then they give a chance, to give its feedback, and then they respond to that to the rebuttal.
Yep.
And also, if anyone wants to participate in this interview, or if someone wants to do it instead, that's fine. Right now, it's tentatively set up for after 5 someplace. I'm not sure, but if anyone wants to be involved in the conversation, let me know. I'll give you an email. So I'm just doing it to make sure that it happens.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
I'm helping on being.
Gotcha. All right. Barry, you want to go first? Or Carl?
Thanks. So first of all, thank you very much for the attention to bus operations and active management. The 2 topics that you didn't mention, besides drop trips and bunching, one is both at off-peak and not off-peak, when people are left behind because buses don't have space for people. I see an amendment both peak and off-peak. And the last thing, when there are bus service interruptions where they need to go take some detour because of an event or something else, in my experience, there's been no information about that at the stops. But really, it's the first three that I think are much bigger deals. Thanks.
Thank you. Barrett?
A couple of weeks ago, there was a rather angry meeting in Wallaston about the developments there. And I'm not going to give you a whole rundown on that, but a couple points. You were talking about the bus shuttles. So someone asked the question, why can't you run the T-buses? So they said, well, we don't have enough buses. Well, as I was coming out of there, I passed the garage, which was full of buses. Not drivers, but buses. But so someone asked, well, what, you see so many people with big packages and king-size baby carriages. How are the, how does Yankee Lines accommodate that?
You put it in the luggage compartment.
Yeah, but not for a baby carriage.
Well, you take the baby out and carriage in the luggage
I hope so.
Okay, I'll let that one pass by. There was another thing about the people running the meeting in Wallaston. Seemed like they didn't really have as much background. They're basically told, you'll tell them this, this, and this, and here's some slides. But any comments that the public was making, and there were a lot of comments, I got the distinct impression that they weren't. It wasn't going to change anything. They were listening, but that was about it.
Barry, when is that going to happen? Is that January 1st, or you know?
Yes, it's
Okay.
second of January.
Can I ask you to for a job? Could you keep your eye on it?
Well, I'd be passing through there almost every day. So
No, but in terms of actually seeing how the shuttle works, if you have time.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Actually taking the shuttle and see the
Oh, taking the
and then
shuttle?
report back to us.
The shuttle started after 9 p.m. So I don't.
No, I meant when it really starts.
Well, you mean the Wallaston North Quincy shuttle?
Right.
We'll see about that. I probably would not be taking that on a regular basis.
No, just once, just to give us.
See how it works out.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. But there was one thing. The previous meeting was in, I think, June, and we were told that there would be, in addition to the shuttles, that there would be limited additional service on the regular service lines that go through Wallaston. So a question that I brought up 2 weeks ago is, would you characterize the additional service they're going to have? And they said, there isn't going to be any. And I was not the only one to hear that. One person actually got a letter from the T that there was going to be additional service. And they said that's not true. So we had a lot of people who were not very happy about that. Now, one last thing about all-door boarding. The only problem I can see is mass crowding on purpose to avoid, like you see people piggybacking on the the gates. They might try to do something like that too. I just want to raise the subject.
That's a good question. Thanks, Barry.
Okay.
At this point, we should close the public portion of the meeting and move to our executive session. Any objections? Do I have a motion to close the meeting? A second?
Second.
We will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry to kick you out. We just every now and then have to do off-the-record, non-public business.
Housekeeping.
Yep.
Could you
And-
shut off the,
Oh, yes. For those of you watching online, thank you for watching, and good night.